I'm going to carry out a little experiment. At the moment there's nothing attached to the big, there's power coming through, but there's nothing attached to the big one at the moment. I'll explain why. And the small one, we've attached the 10,000 milliamp power bank. So the small one is a 7-watt panel and the big one is a 21-watt panel. Now yesterday morning I attached my 5,000 milliamp power bank to the small one, thinking that it would take all day, and it filled it up by lunchtime. I was quite surprised with wall-to-wall sunshine, you know, basically the end of April, beginning of May. These are really efficient. And the 21-watt panel, this one here, did that 10,000 milliamp power bank by lunchtime, well, early afternoon. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it filled it up. So both of these panels, by, you know, early mid-afternoon, had filled up a 10,000 power bank and a 5,000 power bank. So now what I want to do, we know how efficient this one is in really good sunshine with 10,000. So I now want to see how the smaller one manages with 10,000 power bank. So it's 7 o'clock in the morning, it's on 5%. It's obviously going to take a while, but we will see how much power that will get, you know, over a day, you know. And by putting it into a power bank, then we've got a more, you know, rather than just, oh, it charges this and it charges that, which frankly is meaningless to people. If I plug it into a power bank, then we can see how much power, you know, it's actually producing. Anyway, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to let the children play, and I'm going to go back to bed. But we're just slowly starting to get a few rays of sun up on that tor and on that tor over there. So it's just coming up. It's just coming up over there. So once it pops up, then it's going to light the side of this hill. Yesterday I made a slight boo-boo and I put the power banks here, and then in the end, about 9 o'clock in the morning, I moved them over there, because even at 9 o'clock, even though the sun was shining up, this little bank here was pushing them in shade a bit. So we've put them over there, so they will catch the sun as soon as it comes up over that little hill there, which won't be too much longer now. I'll just show you. So first of all, it's just coming up to 10 o'clock and we're on 16%. So far, in almost 3 hours, we've gained just over 10%. We'll have another look at about 12 o'clock and see what it's on. It might just suddenly jump up 1% or 2. I have noticed earlier on, I looked at it and it was 9%, and then I looked about 20 minutes later and it was 11%. So well, we'll have a look about 12 and we'll see. So I don't know whether it will fill it up or not. It's not but it certainly filled up 5,000. So I mean, it should in theory get to it should get to 50% by this afternoon, by 2 o'clock this afternoon, but at the current rate, it's we'll see. It's got some really good sun on it at the moment. It's 11 o'clock and rather interestingly, we're on 28%. So in the last hour,
because it's a digital readout, it's not showing on the camera.
It seems the higher the sun gets, the more powerful it is, because between 7 and 10 o'clock it gained about 10+%, maybe a little bit more than 10%, but you know, 10-ish%. It's gone from about 16-17% to 28%, so 10% in an hour between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock, between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. So in theory, by the time we get to 12 o'clock in an hour, then it should have gained at least another 10%. So in theory, hopefully it'll be nearer 40%, which means that by the time we get to 2 o'clock, which is when the 5,000 power bank yesterday was done, we should be on what, like 60% or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes hour by hour as the sun kind of goes over. But it definitely does seem that the higher the sun shining right down, so even if you have sun on it at an angle, it doesn't seem to power something as much as when it's high above shining down. That's my interpretation, rightly or wrongly. That's kind of how this, I will experiment with this a little bit more, and obviously when I'm not being lazy in camp, I'll put it on the pack and obviously walk with it and see what happens, with a day of walking, especially if you're walking, into the sun and it was effectively in the shade, because it would be behind you. So, it will be interesting to see what happens moving forward, but it definitely does seem more efficient the higher, the sun is. Well, it's 20 past 12. And that one is on 41%. At 12 o'clock it was about 38%. We've emptied this one and we've just attached it just now, so just after 12. So we'll see how those two, it's a bit breezy at the moment. I think the gusts are supposed to die off as the afternoon progresses, but not massively. It's quite breezy today. The original forecast a couple of days ago was not too windy, but the forecast has changed as the days have moved. But at least we've got complete blue sky and the sun, almost overhead. Just got a very small shadow there. So we'll see how that gets on. I suspect that will be charged up by this evening. I'll be very surprised if that small one isn't charged up in 3 or 4 hours. Very interesting to see how that goes. and how the other one gets on. So we're on 40% and it's afternoon. I think there's a reasonable chance that another 6 hours we'll see that charged up. It's just as the sun starts to sort of, you know, go down over there, whether that slows the charging process down a bit. So we'll keep an eye on it. Well, just coming up to 2 o'clock, and that's 56%. I guessed 50 to 60%, so that's 56%. This one's had about an hour and a half, and this one, after an hour and a half, is already over half done. So that 5,000 is going to get done really quite quickly with that 21 watt panel. All right, let's have another look at these. This I'm sure is done now. Yeah, that's fully charged, and that probably was fully charged a while ago. So, you know, in theory, 21 watt solar panel yesterday did 10,000 by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 12 o'clock today we put a 5,000 power bank on there, and that's been done by now, which is 5 o'clock, and it was probably done at least an hour ago. So an interesting test, maybe for another time, is to have an empty 26,500 power bank and see how long, you know, it takes for, you know, for charging that up. I kind of wonder whether in, you know, morning to night, if that makes sense, of, you know, of sunshine in the middle of the summer, given that, you know, it could theoretically easily do 15,000. 26 might be pushing it, but I do think now that you would charge up a 20,000 milliamp power bank in a day with weather like this. I think we need to caveat that with weather like this, wall-to-wall summer sunshine. Let's have a look at this one. 77%. So that's 7,000. Sorry. So that 7 watt panel has got that power bank up, that 10,000 power bank up to 77%, and it's only 4:30. So we've got 4:30, 5, 6, 7. So we've got another 3 hours of daylight. I'm not sure that we will get to 100%, because as the sun starts to, we probably have been doing 10% an hour, but I'm wondering as the sun starts to go down whether that will, you know, taper off a little. We'll keep an eye on it and see, check it again about 6 o'clock in an hour and a half, and if it's on 77, it may be 87. Well, no, because it's it only needs another 23%, doesn't it? No, maths was never my strong point. Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Maybe that 7 watt, maybe that 7 watt panel will do 10,000 milliamps in a day. And obviously we've got all of May and all of June and all of July, which is effectively going to have, you know, a lot of sunshine. Once you're into August, it will start to dip down, because I think in August it starts to get dark at about, is it like 8 o'clock? Whereas I think sun sets now about 8:30. So, but I must admit, I am actually in that now quite impressed. But like I said, this is high. I don't know about midsummer, but we're not, you know, we're only a couple of months away from midsummer. So, you know, we've got May and June, you know, it's midsummer, and then July and August. Once you get into September and October, then you're adding another month, 2 months. Because I know when I was in Scotland with Chris last year, and I was using the 21 watt panel last year, and obviously I was putting power into my large power banks, the power banks were slowly losing power as I was progressing in the walk. But that was because it was, you know, we were into October and the weather wasn't that brilliant. So weather like this, they're pretty impressive. To be honest, it's more than I was expecting. I must admit that it has done a lot more than I was expecting. All right, let's have a look and see where we are. 93%. Not sure what you can see there, but 93%, and it's just coming up to 6 o'clock. So there's still 2 hours, you know, a good 2 hours of daylight, of sun, because it won't go down until 8. So let's see. We should get to 100%, hopefully. I think there's a reasonable chance that we will get to 100% on that power bank. All right, let's have a look at this. Ooh, 99%. Will it get to 100 in the next hour? You can see that the sun is just starting to. It might actually be worth bringing it down, because it's starting to get a bit of shade on it. It might be worth bringing it down and putting it over there. Because it will show 100%. You know, that little symbol thing, it does go to 100. I think whether Bless been oh, 100. It's got to 100 in that. 100%. So 7 watts, 10,000 milliamp power bank from basically 7 o'clock in the morning, because the sun was up at 7 o'clock, until 7 o'clock at night. And that's with complete sunshine. Well, there you go. Well, we'll see. We'll try it again on a less favourable day. But we've got a benchmark. We've got a benchmark now. That's it's quite impressive, really. You know, and one reason why it is not a bad idea to carry a lightweight solar panel. That one, it's like less than 200 grams. It's like maybe like 150 grams or something. I mean, obviously most of where we go, you're not realistically going to get into too much trouble. But if you get into trouble and your phone runs out of battery, if you can get some emergency power into your phone, you know, from a solar panel into a power bank preferably, and then into your phone, when you call the emergency services, even if you don't know where you are, as long as you've got a signal, then I believe they can triangulate where you are. So, you know, there is a safety aspect, you know, to having a solar panel, that you could, you know, get some emergency power, you know, to your phone if necessary. So, you know, there is that as well. Anyway, thanks very much for watching.